he took up the lesson. And that lesson made him move in the things of God and be able to walk with wisdom. So it is what he learned that gave him wisdom to live the life along this narrow plane. The mistake or mistakes we normally do sometimes, we see things, but we never learn. We never take the lessons. We criticize others. We see people doing things, we choose to criticize rather than learning out of it. Because in each and everything that is done, even if it is negative, there is a lesson to learn. Even if it is positive, there is a lesson to learn. You need to learn not to make excuses or to criticize or to apportion blame, but you need to learn and take some lessons that will help you live along in this life. To look, it means to contemplate, to examine, to observe. He had to contemplate on this. He had to examine these things that he's seeing, and he was also to observe, so that in all this he's able to make up the life, to make up a decision, to learn some wisdom out of it. Not just to be somebody who is just looking for the sake of looking, but he's learning out of it lessons that make him live along or go along or make proper and good choices along this life. Hallelujah. It was an opportunity. Every day, we or you have an opportunity to see people conduct themselves. How are they conducting? There are many. Probably since morning till now, you have seen many, and they have conducted themselves in quite different way, varied ways. But in all this, one thing is, you saw, you looked, you saw, you observed. Then what do you learn out of it? We need to record. After recording, we observe in our minds. After recording the scenes and what has happened, we need to observe in our minds to extract lessons for our lives. Because in all this, God is giving us a lesson. You learn a lesson and apply to your life right now at the right time. And everything that happens along the way, God is opening your eyes for you to learn, or you may choose not to learn out of it. You may choose to criticize, you may choose to argue, you may choose to make other things, but in it, all of it, there is a lesson you can learn. And so the wise man says, I looked, I observed, I saw, but out of it, I learned a lesson. I chose to learn out of it, so that what they are doing, if it is negative, I will not choose that route. I will do it in the right way. So I have learned. I will not do the same mistake that person did, because out of it I learned some wisdom that yes, he did this, but in this he has not done it right. And so for me, I will not do the same way he was doing. I'll do it in a better way. I'll choose a better way. I have an option to make a better approach rather than the approach that that person had. I have learned a lesson. I have learned a lesson out of it, and I'm applying it to my life. And that is what Solomon is saying. I looked and I saw. Two good words. I looked, I saw. He looked, and when he looked, he saw what people are doing, things that are happening, all the plans that are there. He's able to extract a lot of lessons out of very many things. When he observed the lilies, he speaks about the lilies. When he observed those little creatures working around the clock. He learned a lesson on how he should work harder. When he looked at the eagle, he learned a lesson out of the eagle. He did not just look at it, but he learned a lesson. He wondered how it survives, but out of it, he learned a lesson. And it gives him wisdom to live for now and to exercise power in the life. And so everything created has a lesson for you to learn. What are these lessons? Are you looking at them? Are you observing them? Are you taking up a lesson, or you are arguing? Are you seeing the rose as a flower, or are you seeing the thorns on that flower and then reject it? But it's a rose. Somebody will see it as a rose, as a flower that will beautify his office or his place or for beauty purposes. But there are some people who will see the thorns, and so they will criticize and say, this flower has thorns. But somebody sees this flower is good. So he doesn't see the thorns. He sees the flower, and the flower works for his benefit. He has learned a lesson that even though this tree or this flower has thorns, it's a flower and it is good. It will give me some sweetness. It will bring some good smell, sweet savor onto my house or whichever. And so you look and observe and see and learn. Hallelujah. It also says, I saw it. This means I witnessed the result that people reap by acting in certain way. Now, when people are behaving in a certain way, you see what they reap out of it. When somebody is doing things not in a proper way, you see the consequences there. And so, because you've seen it, you can learn a lesson. You can choose to not to follow that route. You can choose not to go the same direction because you've learned, you've seen the outcome of all the processes that he followed and what he did, and eventually the results therein. And so, I love Solomon. He's teaching us wisdom in all his books. Proverbs, Song of Songs. He writes great wisdom that he has learned. And in this one, I love it because he saw the end result of every activity under the sun. He will say, I tried. He said he has tried all things, but he realizes it's like chasing wind. It's like chasing wind. It has nothing. I have tried, even if it is having all the world under you, subjecting all the resources, it's like chasing wind. But one thing that is important is that when you know this, serve God your God with all your strength, with all your mind. Knowing in all these things, God will bring everything into judgment. And so, if you have done what is right, then judgment will get you on the right track. If you have done what is not right, judgment will get you on the wrong track. And that's why for him, he learns out of everything he sees. He chooses to learn. He chooses not to criticize. He chooses not to apportion blame. He chooses not to argue. He chooses not to complain, but he chooses to learn out of it. There are many things that God is teaching us through people around us. What are these? What are some of the lessons you have learned out of your brother, out of your sister, out of the people around you? It could be even your neighbors. It could be at the place of your work. You're working with people and they are doing things, and you find the end result of what they are doing has led them into big trouble. And so you cannot choose that way when you know you will also fall in the same trap. You will walk the right way. You see somebody falling in a ditch. You cannot follow that route. You cannot step on that ditch again because your brother has fallen in it. You can't fall in it. That is what Solomon is saying here. That I saw And so I learned. I took a lesson out of it. And so I choose to live in a proper way rather than walking astray as many people would choose. And so this principle applies when you learn this lesson. We must do it to our benefit and growth. Now, as you learn, it benefits you. You are the beneficiary of what you have learned, of the lesson learned. And you can choose to benefit out of it and grow. Be a better person, a better you, a better vessel that will bring about great revolution, that even those who have fallen can learn and choose to follow you. You can become an example that people will choose to follow and say, I will follow this one because of this. Hallelujah. When you see somebody who is doing good things, we have to imitate them and do what they are doing. When we see those who are doing the wrong or working astray, we must learn a lesson and not to follow them, but learn a lesson out of it, so that we can be able to apply wisdom in our days. Hallelujah. Seeing the sloth, I took advice to keep laziness out of my life. He saw the sloth, how he was in a blanket. He chooses to rest when he's supposed to work. He chooses to see there is out there. It is cold out there. For fear of working, he says it is cold. He doesn't wake up and go. He is lazy. He moves around on the bed like the door when it moves on the streets. He is not taking a step. And so, when seeing the sloth, he took advice to keep laziness out of his life. And that is a good lesson he has learned out of it. And you can see them and criticize them, and even talk about them, and even abuse them. But what are you taking out of it? Learn a lesson. Don't just abuse them. Don't just criticize them. Don't just apportion the blame, but learn